Hello, this is Andrew from A Million Bike, and this is the recap for the Big River Gravel Series Burning Quad 2024. I did the 100K version. There was also a 50K version. I'm not sure if Burning Quad is a reference to how your legs will feel at the end, or if it's because it's held in July near the Quad Cities, so guaranteed to be hot, humid, and windy. Both were true. Actual temps were in the mid 90s by the finish. Heat index had to have been over 100. It was hot, hot. Tough day for everyone. It was a well-organized event. Shout out to whoever selects the music. You deserve a high five. Love the energy before the event. Love the energy afterwards. I also like that these start at 10 a.m. It makes it easy to get in the car at a reasonable time and get out there the same day. Google gives me basic demographic data for who watches these videos, so it's probably safe to assume that most of you are in a similar situation, where being able to silo an event into a single day where you get up at a reasonable time and get home at a reasonable time makes the situation much easier to sell to your partner. I live in Chicago. There are lots of options for gravel events within driving distance. Not many of them are as easy for me to attend. This series was the first thing I committed to in January, partially because I knew the events were going to be fun, safe, and competitive. But part of it was that I knew that there was a high likelihood that I was going to be able to make each of the events because of how they're structured. There was good communication leading up to the event, solid pre-race talk about safety and places on the course where extra care was warranted. The route was shared early. It was labeled in a way that made sense. There were no changes. I know it might seem weird to hear me say these words out loud. It's such a basic thing, but some race organizers fumble this. They reuse routes from previous years without changing the names after changing the route, or change the route after it's published and don't make it clear that the route has changed, etc. The organizer nailed it. There was no route confusion. It was a good course overall. The organizer always draws a good course with fun and interesting features. This race included a motocross track. More on that later. There were features early in the race to create some separations, which is what we want. We want groups of similar abilities to form early. This makes the event safer for everyone and helps ensure that most people will end up with someone to ride with. On that topic, I love that there is a party pace option for the 50K. They made a point of offering those folks a beer before we rolled out.
Last but not least, our party pace people, or just in general, anyone trying to have a good time, does anyone want a beer?
Awesome. I might be doing this wrong. I mentioned the good energy afterwards. It's worth circling back on that. People hang out, eat some pizza, drink a beer. Non-alcoholic options are available, both for beer and other beverages, whatever your thing is. It's fun to get out there and suffer a little, then hang out afterwards. Have a chat with the friends you made at the last race and make some new ones. If you take away nothing else from the rest of what comes next, 5 out of 5 stars. Highly recommended. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, all that jazz. If you make it to the next one on September 7th, if you like riding bikes, you will have fun. Hopefully, it's a little cooler by then. Quick word on tire volume. I ran 45s. I was glad I did. I probably put in too much pressure after overthinking the whole road gravel split. There were quite a few times where a larger contact patch would have been useful. Let's get to the race. Neutral start out of town with a police escort. First couple miles were fairly chill. Then it got surgy. That was a little weird so early in the race. Maybe the goal was to create some groups. I don't know. I try not to do unnecessary work until the first big selection happens. I didn't look back to see how many people were still there. It seemed like we were still in a pretty big group. Then things settled down to a fairly chill pace. Probably because anyone who looked at the course knew the first real chance to make selections happen started around 5.8 miles in. Then it was on. It was fast, slow, every little hill was an effort. We still had a big group. I should not have let myself ride as far back in the group as I did. Staying closer to those first 4, 5, 6 slots in the engine room would have been much smarter. Being that far back made it hard to see the upcoming road surface, the turns, changes in terrain, and I was doing more work than I should have, rubber banding in the middle. I rode with the group for 12 miles, got spooked in some tight turns as one of the guys moved over, lost the wheel. Was just about back on and then overcooked a turn and got popped. This was one of the moments where more contact patch would have been nice. That said, I was always going to get dropped by that group at some point. It's just a question of when. Top 4 or 5 guys up there were throwing down some real numbers. Brief detour to talk about something I find annoying when some people talk about the level of competition in smaller races. My normalized power for the 31-ish minutes after exiting the neutral zone to this point was 292 watts, which is 4.17 watts per kilogram. Expanding that to 45 minutes, normalized power was 284 watts, or 4.06 watts per kilogram. Make it an hour, it's 269 watts, or 3.84 watts per kilogram, with 2.5 hours still left to go. Obviously, my numbers are not pro-level numbers, but that's where it's important to remember that I got spat out the back of the group doing 292 watts normalized. That seems competitive to me. Let's move on. I rode tempo till the group behind swept me up. We picked up a few more riders who must have managed to hang on longer than I did. It was a big group. We had plenty of riders there. I would have preferred a harder race at this point, but this section of the course was either mostly downhill or flat, so it's really tough to shed weight on these kinds of sections. I mostly just didn't want anyone else to get away without me. There were a few attacks, nothing serious. Most of the time others would cover. I had raced with a few of the guys in the engine room before, so I had a decent sense of which ones I needed to watch and or let them have some distance so I could jump across and see if we could make something happen. But nothing came of it. The terrain made it hard to create space. Ended up riding with that group until the motocross CX section. I have mixed feelings about the CX motocross section, probably because I crashed there, mostly my fault. It was fun, challenging until I crashed. It did break up the field, which was the stated goal of the disruptor. This was another time where more contact patch would have been nice. It is my practice to go give kudos to everyone in the race results list on Strava. When I did this on Sunday, I made a point of reading everyone's descriptions, and where there was feedback on this aspect of the course, it was positive. The same thing is true for the other social networks where it came up. Obviously, that's not scientific, so it's hard to say what the actual consensus is. It's also possible that thumper rules apply. I suspect that those with good bike handling skills were all in. Those, like me, who muddle their way through it, probably had more mixed feelings about it. I tried to go in at the front, got in second wheel, then messed up by taking a wrong turn almost immediately. I ended up touching wheels with another guy. Fortunate to stay upright, and then, as I mentioned, laid the bike down in a muddy turn where it went from bright to dark and I couldn't see. It's one of the downsides of wearing photochromatic sunglasses. I wasn't going very fast, so fortunately no injuries. I love those Castelli gravel bibs. But it did cost me around 25 seconds to pick myself up off the floor, collect all my stuff, and clear my pedal enough that I could clip back in. I ended up taking a nice bit of dirt back home with me inside the pedal. Had to chisel it out with a screwdriver when I got back. I mentioned that the CX course disrupted the field. It almost disrupted me out of the pointy end. But I wasn't ready for my race to be over, so I put in an effort to catch back up to the group. It took 4 minutes and 16 seconds to make it back on, including the grass section. Normalized power for the whole effort was 303 watts, with 320 watts once I got off the grass. Those aren't crazy numbers, but an hour and 30 minutes in, with the heat, it hurt a little. The group seemed fairly motivated at this point. We were still on fast, flat gravel. We were working well and caught up to 2 more guys who had slipped through that CX course ahead of us. The first guy in, and the guy on the mountain bike. Which, by the way, that guy's my hero. Fairly confident I know his take on the CX course. I tried several times to get a rotating pace line going. A few of the other guys were doing the same. I want to keep the pace high. I want to keep the race hard. Some riders got it, some are willing to work. Some of the others didn't or didn't want to. That was a little frustrating for me, and it seemed to also be for those who wanted to keep the race hard. I understand it. Everyone's out there to ride their best race. Many times, having the balls to race isn't the smart thing to do. Sorry, Remco. But in the moment, It was frustrating. I totally get it, Remco. We did that for the next few miles. Then around 41, knowing that we had some kickers incoming, I went off the front to shed weight. I should probably take a moment to explain what I mean by shed weight and why I need to shed weight in these races. I use that phrase frequently in these recaps. I don't mean that pejoratively. I mean it tactically. If you watch the Grand Tour racing recaps, you'll often hear presenters mentioning how puncher or roller teams try to drop sprinters on the flat stages that have climbs so that their guy has a chance at the end. Hello, my name is Andrew. I can't sprint. I like to pretend that I'm a puncher. I don't do a great job with that either, but that I cannot sprint is a reality that I need to acknowledge and form the foundation of my race strategy around. At the end, the smaller the group I finish with, the better my chances, because I'm going to lose whatever sprint there is. I need the race to be hard enough to grind off those who can sprint, but might not have the diesel to stay away from the group after a jump, or if they're contributing. 4 of us, including me, got away there. Everyone there earned it and seemed committed to keeping the race hard. We worked well together, got to rotating until the chunky gravel sections made that too difficult, and then took turns. This was my favorite part of the race. I really enjoy that dynamic when you're in a small group, still big enough to move with purpose. Everyone is on the same wavelength, working towards the same goal. Out there, middle of nowhere, in the sun, suffering together. Unfortunately, as nice as that was, it couldn't last. Remember, I can't sprint. So where the terrain made it possible to put in a dig, I did. I suspect that some of the other guys were doing the same because we went from 4 to 3 by mile 48. By 49-ish, I was starting to get worried that I wouldn't be able to lose the other 2 because we were running out of hills. I attacked for real this time. They were still there and looking strong at 50.1. My calves were starting to twitch a little bit at this point, which usually means I'm running out of time for other reasons. So I went again on the next hill, got low, and tried to put as much distance between me and the other 2 as I could. When I looked back, I could still see them, but far enough away that dialing down to endurance was probably the right strategy, given that there was just under an hour to go. I targeted a normalized power of around 220 watts and made it happen. This was not the fun part of the race. Roughly 60% of the miles that were left were into a 13 mile an hour headwind. That was a little bit of a slog, but it's a slog that I can understand. Put your head down, metaphorically of course, flip on the oil burners, and turn the pedals. I almost made a catastrophic mistake. I wasn't paying attention and rode through a turn. Fortunately, I caught it pretty quick and only lost about 25 seconds. That was around the time my back started bothering me. It was weird. It went from okay to not okay like a light switch. I did what I could do and wrote it in. I did not remember to ride through the line. I ended up getting 2nd in my race and 7th overall. Given that I was targeting 3rd in the old man race to keep my streak going, I have to be disappointed with that. Now for some reflection. I need to get better with position in the group at the beginning of races. Almost every race, as I watch back the video, I have to wonder why I am where I am in the moments leading up to getting popped. I know that's not the right place to be, but for some reason I just can't remember to do that in the moment. My back thing is still a thing. Having put in several long rides recently where it either wasn't a problem or it wasn't a problem until much later, I did not expect that. That was stupid. It's probably because the long rides I've been doing have incorporated out of the saddle climbing and or breaks to refill water. I did not manage that on Saturday. So when it lit up, it was very uncomfortable. Fortunately, as I was by myself at that point, doing some random standing work was totally acceptable. There was no one around to judge me. That dialed it down to tolerable. It definitely made me slower. Next race, got to remember to do the seated cat-cows when I can and get out of the saddle as much as I can. I'm going to put nutrition here, although I think I did pretty well overall, because it's something I need to tweak more. I dialed back the carbs and sodium from what I did in the last race. On the sodium side, I think I'm almost there. I might bump that up just a touch. For the carbs, I was concerned about the heat. On reflection, I don't think I should have dialed that down. it would have been more useful to keep it the same and see what happened in the heat. It's unfortunate that running nutrition experiments introduces the potential for catastrophic outcomes. I need to be braver here, but that's hard for me. Wrapping up, it was another awesome event in a series of awesome events hosted by the Big River Gravel Series. I liked the vibe of the race, of the racers, of the before and the after. People are friendly. I feel like we share a common goal to get out, ride bikes, compete, but not be a dick in the competition. I like that. When someone went down, which happens in races, people pause. They ask the person if they're okay before continuing on. There is a sense of community and shared responsibility. I like that. I enjoy doing the Big River Gravel Series races more than any of the other races I do. I think a big part of why they work, why there is that sense of community, and why it feels good to participate, why it's fun, competitive, and safe, flows from the team that makes it happen. I feel like they care about doing it right. Making it inclusive, providing a space for everyone who wants to get out there and ride bikes, a chance to get out there and ride bikes. Everyone. I like that. I hope you found that useful. If you did, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below and I will get to them as soon as I can. Thanks.